As someone who sells boats, we should never tell you that boats are expensive, but they are. Stick around to find out why on today's video. Some people say boats are bring on another $1,000, and we often sell them as best of all times. But it is true that boats are, relatively speaking, more expensive than a lot of other vehicles, particularly cars. And why is that? In today's video, we're going to talk about the different reasons that boats are more expensive, and it may not be why you're thinking. The primary driver of boat pricing is the fact that the manufacturing base is very, very small. You may think, how small is it? So to give you a comparison, in 2019, there were 350,000 boats built in North America. And that might seem like a lot, but the 20th largest car company, Mitsubishi, built 1.2 million cars. And so that's one manufacturer alone. So that is a significantly smaller number of boats being built than cars. You take all the much larger car companies and add them all up, and that industry is enormous compared to boats. What does that mean? As a boat builder, your purchasing power and access to technology is much, much smaller. So you are building on a smaller scale. You're building mostly by hand. There's very few boat manufacturers who use any automation at all, definitely very little in the way of robotics. Some of them have some CNC cutting going on, but for the vast majority of them, it's all built by hand. Hand welding, hand fiberglass laying, hand stitching of the vinyls. We're not talking about any mass production at all. So that's probably the biggest reason. The other reason is it's very resource intensive. So not only are you putting a lot of labor hours into it because it's built by hand, but a fiberglass boat is all built by petroleum, and we all know what's happening to the price of oil. As the price of oil goes up, so does the price of the raw materials for boats, whether it's vinyl or it's fiberglass or it's gel coat. All of those materials are going to be more expensive. And then you have supply shortage issues, which when you're a smaller industry, you have a lot less pull, so you end up paying more in order to get that product there on time. It is true that boats are relatively more expensive than comparably thought of cars and trucks. It's not the reason people think. Boat manufacturers aren't getting super wealthy, they're not driving around in Ferraris or taking huge CEO bonuses. Car execs are probably a lot better off than boat execs. So it's not a gouging situation. It's not that the boat manufacturers are padding their pockets with extra profits. It's just that their cost of manufacture is significantly higher than you might otherwise think. Another reason the boats are relatively more expensive is that they last a lot longer. People tend to drive their car 20, 30, 40,000 miles a year or more. But boats are used for 10 to 40 hours often in a season. So they are much more gently used. They are in storage for a lot longer time and out of the elements. And so people will use a boat for much longer periods of time. They will own them longer periods of time, and they will be sold more times in their lifespan. There is a demand in the used boat market which far exceeds the car market, and that depreciation of a boat is so much lower than a car, and that helps keep the pricing higher. So the pricing of new boats is driven by smaller scale manufacturing and more expensive inputs of labor and materials. And on the used boat side, it's because those higher prices dictate where the used boat market is going to be, and because they have a much higher longevity, it's going to make that pricing a little bit higher. So a lot of people think the boating is expensive, but really is it? The purchase price might be expensive, but the true cost of boat ownership isn't as high as you think. Check out this video here where we talk about all the input costs on what it costs to go boating in a day. Thanks very much for checking out today's video on Cove Lessons in Boating. We'll see you out on the water.